All right, thank you so much for staying with us. You're still watching Business Nigeria. We'll continue our conversation. The Ministry of Interior and the Nigerian Employers Consultative Association, NECA, have reached an agreement to collaborate to ensure a seamless implementation of ongoing reforms by the federal government, especially with regards to immigration matters. Addressing journalists after a meeting with NECA and other stakeholders in Ikeja, Lagos, the Minister of Interior, Dr. Olubunmi Tunji-Ojo, disclosed that the issues discussed at the meeting included the reforms that bordered on the combined expatriate residence permit and aliens card, expatriate quota, business permits, border control, among others. They said the meeting resolved to set up a committee that would work behind the scenes to fine-tune discussions on the issues so far, adding that the most important thing was to make decisions that would not discourage investment, but protect the interest of Nigerians. Well, there are a lot of issues to look at today, but joining me live from Geneva in Switzerland is the Director General of the Nigerian
they eventually suffer for it. The FRCN levy, we have also reached out to our humble and very resourceful Executive Secretary, Dr. Lobo. We've reached out to all critical stakeholders concerning the need for the amended act, that part that is quite contentious and that is strangulating businesses, for it to be reviewed. In fact, suspended now, because many businesses, they are in the throes of filing, and that bill, that act, that bill, that levy is like a sort of Damocles in their head. So we want to use the opportunity to also appeal once again to Dr. Rabi Ulubu and those that should listen, that while it is the law, but expediency should help us to decide, is it appropriate for us to implement this now when businesses are reducing capacity utilization, when level of stock is increasing, when jobs are being lost? We can't close our eyes and say, look, it is the law, it is the law. The law is not made to kill us. The law is made to facilitate business growth. And if that same law is now constituting an hindrance to development of the private sector, and by extension, an hindrance to the development of the economy of this nation, I think we can review it. If the 4% FOB can be suspended, if we are still appealing that the 50% tariff can also be reduced, can also be suspended, I think there is no reason why the FRCN can also take a cue from this pattern of that has been initiated for us to save the us, for us to save the goose that is laying the golden egg.
A lot of talks. I think there needs to still be a lot of push and talks from all angles. Because for real, I would agree with you that considering the economic situation that everyone sees what is happening, there is a gradual recovery. Like my first discussion was about what Chatham House is saying about efforts of government and how it's, how it's paying
Absolutely.
out. So I think the private sector also needs to breathe. Let the private sector breathe. I think I totally agree with that. No sentiments here. I'm just being very factual. Let's also look at the constitution of some boards, like the NSITF, PENCOM, and all of that. I got a press release from your association saying that NECA threatening stoppage of contribution if these boards are not constituted. Tell me more about that.
Just before I latch onto your conversation, permit me to also say on the last conversation you had about the levies and fees, and this is the reality of it. And you mentioned rightly that there is some semblance of growth or recovery in the economy.
Yes.
And for us, we think it is very important that all agencies, ministries, departments, they see the bigger picture. This myopic view about revenue generation will do more damage to the bigger picture that the president is looking. For 100 million that a private sector business pay in fees or levies, even when the presidential committee is trying to harmonize all these fees, for every extra 100 million that a business pays, that is harassed to pay, what we should ask is, how many jobs will be lost? What's the quantum of that expenses will be passed to the consumer? How much damage are we doing to the disposable income of the average Nigerian? Because those costs will not just pop away in the air. Those costs will be added to the cost of inputs, which we also show directly in the cost of goods and services. So we should look at the bigger picture, and the focus should be how many businesses can we save? The same thing happened to the Lagos State Water Regulatory Commission. Same thing happened. So many of those agencies focus on revenue generation at the direct detriment of economic growth of this country, which can also hinder this recovery that we are talking about. It's an appeal that we're making, that all these agencies should temper justice with mercy and let the bigger picture play the critical role. Now, coming to the issue of the boards of NSITF, PENCOM, and many others, I think for us, it's more of the issue of governance. It's less of the issue of the personalities involved in those organizations. while some of them have shown a high level of responsibility, cooperation, and support to the private sector, the fact still remains that the boards are to play a very critical oversight role on those organizations. And our interest stem from the fact that the contributions to those agencies are not government funds. So we should be clear about it. All government funds, they go to the federation account. The funds to these agencies are specifically for certain services to the private sector. They are paid directly by the private sector. So by the privilege of management and government appointing head of those agencies to manage it, it doesn't confer that those funds are government funds. They are funds contributed by the private sector. So for us, management of those funds become very imperative. Judicious of those funds become very imperative. And even at the higher level, for all social insurance schemes, for all schemes like that, a key parameter, even that the Act guarantees, is the need for good governance. Employers cannot contribute 10% of their 10% to pension, while the employee contribute about 8% to pension. Some employers are taking the whole chunk of the pension contribution, and we will not have a say in the context of how those funds have been managed. So if the heads of agency say they are engaging stakeholders, who are the stakeholders they are engaging? The employers and the workers in the context of pension are the stakeholders. So when they say they are engaging stakeholders, who exactly is the stakeholders that they are engaging? For NSITF, the employer is the significant contributor to the NSITF funds. And our view is those boards, almost over 2 years that this administration has been in place, that those boards need to be constituted for one reason, for good governance reasons. Absolutely. Our view is good governance. Our view is the judicious use of those funds. Our view is that we contribute those funds and we should have a definitive say on how those funds are being managed, irrespective of the act, basically, as it says. And our demand, our request is also not out of the context of the act. The act specifies that a board should play certain role. So if government is not constituting the board, then why should the employers continue to pay? Those are critical issues that we just need to interrogate. If the boards are not constituted, why are you expecting me to continue to pay? And those are fundamental conversations that we think we cannot run away from. It's basically an issue of governance, and it's basically an issue of appropriateness, and it's basically an issue of doing the right thing when we are supposed to do it.
Before I let you go, let's touch on this petrol price war that we've seen in recent times. It's been this drop from here. Dangote comes in today. The price of PMS comes this way. Tomorrow, NNPC comes and says, many will tell you that it's interesting that they want this to continue until it gets to as low as 500 naira. But really, that might not be possible in the nearest future. It might happen though, but what do you really make of this? It seems like deregulation seems to be paying off at the end of the day.
When the market is significantly liberalized, and the market forces, is allowed to play a very significant role in price stabilization. Some have called it you should operate a guided deregulation, because you can't really leave the markets to determine the prices, especially when the demand for those goods, the elasticity of demand for those goods is very low. So what is happening for us is quite interesting. Is the direction to go. The fact still remains this, and is a poser for all of us. For being a Nigerian, for having the privilege, even while some persons might think being a Nigerian is not a privilege, we believe strongly that being a Nigerian is a privilege. This country is blessed. This country is highly endowed. This country, with the right, doing the right thing at the right time, we are poised to lead the world. Now, by the privilege of being a Nigerian, and by the privilege of being in the country where God has blessed with crude oil or some natural resources, there must be some benefits that I should get from being a Nigerian. So when you said the price of petrol probably cannot come to 500, why can't it come to 500 naira? Why can't it come to 500 naira? So we don't want to call it price war now. The price juggling by the Dangote Refinery and the NNPC is quite interesting. And we can only hope that the juggling will continue so that more funds, more cash can stay within the context of the pocket of the average Nigerian. And the more cash, the more funds the average Nigerian has, or the more funds the average household has in his pocket, the more disposable income he will have to expend on the buying of goods and services, which also feeds back into the context of production and consumption, which is for us basic economics that can drive this economy. So it's quite interesting. We read that there's going to be a renegotiation of the swap, cash for crude swap. We hope the renegotiation will be much more favorable for local refineries because we need local refineries to take charge. There is still no reason, many experts still believe, and we believe also, reason why we should be importing petrol. When Dangote said, look, they can meet the demand, other local refiners said they can meet the demand of local. So why are we expending forex on importation? It's quite contradictory and it's quite ironic. But the price war, as you call it, we think is quite interesting, and Nigerians can only be better for it.
Mr. Adewale Smart Oyerinde, thank you so much for your time. Director General, Nigerian Employers Consultative Association, NECA. Do enjoy the rest of your day and see you soon.
Thank you for having us once again.
All right, then.